Hi, and a good Erev Shabbat. I think you remember from last time I was on, where I said my late mother-in-law always used to greet anyone who she was speaking to on a Friday as a good Erev Shabbat. That's not just a Friday, it's a day when we're going to usher in the holy day of Shabbat. And it's a special one because it is the coronation of our king, the new king. And today is also Pesach Sheni. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm Rabbi Lew from Stanmore, and I'm very appreciative that you've come to join us from wherever you are around the kingdom. Oh, yes, the kingdom, or around the world, to join in on the US.TV on their weekly Erev Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat program. And I also give a special welcome to my own community. We have one on Zoom, and they kindly and graciously have given up on their one just for the service. We're going to meet up again afterwards for a few minutes. So it's the weekend of the coronation. You can't just take it lightly. It's a very special moment. We haven't seen one, not in my lifetime. And for many people, they were much younger. 70 years is an extraordinary amount of time, and our late queen, the mother of the nation. But a lot of people feel that this is, also a special moment for them to be able to tell their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren how they were here when King Charles III was crowned and anointed in the ceremony and service, which will make him formally and officially our king. So shortly, I'm going to say the special prayer that was composed by the chief rabbi, who we know is going to represent the entire Jewish community at the service. He was on TV, I think it was yesterday or today, and he gave a good insight into how he felt on behalf of the Jewish community being actually invited to take even a small part in the service, not the formal service, because that wouldn't be permitted in Jewish law, but certainly immediately following the service with a few other faith leaders to feel that they are a part of what's happening in our country. It was also an opportunity for the chief rabbi to explain the day of Shabbat. So no microphone for him and no driving. He was actually he's being hosted by His Majesty the King and Queen at Kensington Palace, so that his walk to the ceremony and service will be short. No driving. So it's an opportunity. It was an opportunity, has been an opportunity, and it will go down very well that he was able to communicate some of our valuable and cherished traditions on an important weekend like this. Before I say the prayer, just to also add that today is Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni means the second Pesach. Now, I can see a few people saying, I've barely recovered from Pesach, although personally, I love Pesach. I can't get enough of it. But I do appreciate that not everybody feels that way. But today is the second one. What that means is that when the Jewish people came out of Egypt, the night before the Exodus, they were told to make a Seder night. And at the Seder, they were to eat certain foods and to communicate a pre-dictated narrative. God instructed via Moses what they should be talking about. And effectively, it was communicate who you are as a people and who are you and what type of people you are about to become in just under 2 months on Shavuot, when you will receive the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai and the Torah with it. And you need to talk about it. I often quote the late Chief Rabbi Sachs, who said that after the trauma and the terrible suffering and the extraordinary pain that they suffered in Egypt, Moses did not tell them, make sure we have a strong army so that we'll never let this happen again. He never said to them, never again, etc., etc. What he said was, V'higadata levinecha. Make sure you talk about who you are to the next generation, because if you don't, there won't be a generation to fight. It will all just become lost. That's always been the battle cry of the Jewish people. It's why we're here today, is because although we sometimes slip, by and large, we hold on to what we have and we try as hard as possible, hopefully by personal example, to communicate it to the next generation on their terms and on their level, so that they will continue to carry on this message. That was the first Seder night. The next year, Of course, the food element, they had the lamb, the Pesach lamb, and the matzah and the maror. The following year, they did it again. However, in the meantime, there were people who were unable to be a part of that ceremony. There are rules. Some of them are, one of them is that one has to be ritually pure to take part in the Seder, and they were not. They had been involved in Chevra Kadisha, preparing people for burial. Such a big mitzvah, but it also makes the person ritually impure, and they wanted Pesach, but Moshe said you can't. It doesn't work. But they complained, and they said, Lama Nigara, why should we be deprived of such a beautiful mitzvah? They knew that they had a way out, but they didn't want the way out. They wanted to celebrate. And so Hashem said to Moshe, that's fine. I'll have another date for anyone, for these people and for all subsequent generations, that anyone who's unable to observe Pesach on the first time, the original date, will have a second opportunity 1 month later on the 14th of Iyar. That's today, the 14th of Iyar, Pesach Sheni. It's not a dramatically big day for a lot of people. Many have the tradition to have some matzah, which I did, along with bread, but matzah just to recognize the moment. And for me, the message is perhaps more important than anything else, which is never give up. You missed out the first time, keep trying. God likes that. He liked it then, and he likes it now. Okay, so that's Pesach Sheni. Let's move on to the special prayer that has been composed to celebrate this incredible weekend. I'm going to read it in the original Hebrew and the English. This was composed by the chief rabbi. This is, besides for the prayer for the royal family now, the prayer for the royal family, as someone who's been reading it for over 30 years, I still occasionally find it a little tricky because there's so many references to her, because of the queen. I can get the His Majesty bit, but everything else is a bit tricky. But I'm getting used to it. But now they've changed it, tweaked it a bit, because as we know, the palace would like Queen Camilla not to be the queen consort anymore. She should be Queen Camilla. So tomorrow in Shul, I will be reading the new prayer, excuse me, which recognizes the queen as the queen. But here's a different prayer, which was composed for this occasion. Again, Hebrew first, and then the English. Ribon ha'alamim, b'cha melachim yimlechu, v'sarim yasoru, ata sechanein kis'am, uviyadecha hoidam v'sifartam, ata hishavta es avdecha hamelech Charles, al kisei aveisav, v'samtai elyoin le'umim tachas shiftoi, shevet mishair v'chesed, shevet cherus v'shalvat amin. V'hinei, nimshach hayom lemelech, v'nezer malchus nitam beroshai, mikamfei haaretz koil teruas melech shamaynu, ashreinu hachosim betzilai, she'anachnu machtirim oisei b'shir, uviranana, yachad im kol yoshvei artzos memshaltai, v'libeinu yege lecha toda, shesamta chelkenu bahem, v'shehecheyisanu, v'kiyamtanu, liyem simchas malkenu. Lochem b'halel u'b'zimra, navoyai b'eisecha, gam b'sfila u'v'sachanunim, l'kadma fanecha, ono adonai, hoshia hamelech, harech yamav b'toiv, v'shonav b'neimim, v'chasheshata l'roishei ateres paz, kein ta'atrehu, oiz v'hadar, v'shemen sasain, mishachehu. Shlach erecha v'amitcha, hema yanchuhu, v'kuyam bo yikraeni v'e'enehu, ima yanoichi v'tzara, achalatzehu v'achabdehu, oirech yamim asbiehu, v'yarehu b'yishuasi. Ribon ha'olamim, Almighty God, by your grace, kings reign and princes rule. You establish their thrones. Their glory and majesty are in your hands. You have placed your servant King Charles III on the throne of his ancestors. He rules over many in places across the world under his scepter, which symbolizes freedom, righteousness, and humanity. Today, he is anointed king, and the crown of sovereignty is placed upon his head. Songs of rejoicing and loyalty resound from people across the world. Happy are those who dwell in safety under his shadow, that we share in his royal acclamation. Our hearts are full of gratitude to you who determines our fate in these lands and has kept us in life, preserved us, and enabled us to reach this precious moment of rejoicing. Therefore, we come before you with supplication and thanksgiving and fervently pray to you, God. God, save the King. Prolong his days with happiness and his years with well-being. Just as you set a crown of royalty upon his head, so may you crown him with glory and anoint him with the oil of gladness. May your light and your truth always guide him. Fulfill for him your sacred promise. When he calls upon me, I will answer him. I will be with him in times of trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With length of days I will satisfy him, and I will show him my salvation. Amen. And again, we hope and pray that tomorrow will go beautifully and smoothly. I was reading somewhere, it's like 900 years or so of kings and queens who have gone through this ceremony. I even saw an advert. I think it said 39 monarchs. It's quite an incredible thing. We have such a long tradition in an era where we almost don't delve into anything. Everything is scatterbrain and quick. It's nice to know that some things have a tradition, and it's nice people appreciate it, and that it goes back for a long, long time. But most importantly, I think that's what's in the prayer of the chief rabbi. We recognize God's hand in all of this, and that we have a benevolent, kind, sensitive, and caring king for faiths, all faiths, including the Jewish faith. That's for me the key thing. Everything else, character, that's not for now. What we are interested in, what we are praying fervently for, is the calmness and the blessing that the sovereignty sort of spreads. And please God, governments pick it up, and they will continue to be the messengers of God, to look after us, the Jewish community, the Jewish people, and of course, all the citizens of this great country. God save the King, L'chaim. Okay, we're up to the prayer now. If you're using the newest, it's not the newest, it's a brand new siddur, which is just about coming out. But if you have a green one, we're on page 256, Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh, Avarachamon, Meshoich Avdecha, El Ritzoyenecha, Yarutz Avdecha, Kemo Yayol, Yishtachave, El Mul Hadarecha, Yerav lo yedidai secha minoi festuf v'chol ta'am hadur noe ziv ha'olam nafshi chayelas ahavasecha Ana elna refana la behara isla noam zivecha astis chazek vesis rapei v'yisala simchas olam Vasik Yemuna Rachamecha V'chusana Al Beinahu Vecha Ki Ze Kama Nichsafti Lirais B'Seferes Uzecha Eile וחמדה ליבי וחוסנה ואל תסלם הגלנה ופרויס חביבי עלייס סוכס שלוי מחה תאיר ארץ מכבודך נגילה ונשמחה בך מהר אהוב כי במועד וחננו כי מעולם דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 דרי לי 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 diri lai 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 diri lai 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 diri lai 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 diri lai 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 diri lai 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 la diri lai 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 lam la lai 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 lam diri lai 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 la lai 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 Tiri lai 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 lai, tiri lai 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 lai, tiri lai la 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 lai la la lai lai lai, tiri lai 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 la 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 la, tiri lai la 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 la. We continue now Lechun Ranana, page 258. Lechun Ranana Ladayanoi Noria Letsui Sheinu Nekadma for the visit of his Midas Noria Loi Kiel Godel Adonai Melech Godel Al Kol Elohim Asher biyadoi mechkerei aretz v'sayai foisarim loi Asher lehayam behu asahu ויבשס ידיו יצרו בו יונשתחווה ונכרע נברכה לפני אדוני יוסינו כי הוא אלינו ואנחנו עם מריסי וציין ידי הימים בקולות תשמעו אל תקשו לבבכם כי מריבה כי יום מסע במדבר אשר נרצוני אבזיכם בחנוני כמראו פעלי 40 שנה אקוט בדויר ואומר המתוי לבה בהם והם לא ידעו דרכי אשר נשבעתי ביפי אם יבואון אל מנוחה סילאי שיר לאדוני שיר חדש שיר לאדוני כל הארץ שיר לאדוני ברכו שמי בחסרו מיין ליין ישוע ספרו וגויים כבודי בכל העמים נפלאי סב כי גדול אדוני ומהולל נאיראהו על כל אלוהים לילי כי כל אלוהי העמים אלילים ואדוני שמיים עשה הוד והדר לפניו וספרס במקדש הבו לאדוני משפחי עמים הבו לאדוני כבוד ואיס הבו לאדוני כבוד שמי שאו מנחה וביו לחצרי סב לילה ישתחוו לאדוני בהדרס קודש חילו מפניו כל הארץ אמרו בגויים אדוני מלך אהבתי כתבל בהלתי מות ידין עמים במי שערים ישמחו השמיים בסגל הארץ הירם היום Omeloy Yalois Sodai Vechol Asher Boi Lailai Az Yeranenu Kolatze Yoar Lifnei Adoyanoi Kiva Lishbait Haaretz Yishbait Tevel B'tzedek V'yahamim Be'emunasoi Lai 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 Lam Lai Lam Lai Lai Lam Dam Dam Lai Lai Lam Lai Lam Lai Lam Adonai malach tagel haaretz yismechu im rabim on barafos vivav tzedek umishpat mechankis oy eish lefanav telechus lahet saviv etzarav hiru v'rakov tebel roas avatachel haaretz harim kadoy naknamas milifnei Adonai milifnei Adonai kol haaretz yigidu hashamayim tzidkoi וראו כל העמים כבוידו וישו כל עבדי פסל המסללים בועלים השתחוו לו כל אלוהים שמעה ותשמח ציון ותגלנה בני יהודה למען משפטך אדוני כי אתה אדוני עליונה כל הארץ מיועד נעליסו על כל אלוהים Oy have Adonai yasin ura shoymen afshois chasidav miyad reshaim yatzilem oy zaru ala tzadik Ole Yishrei Lev Simcha Simchu Tzadikim B'Adonai V'hoyedu Lezecher Kadshay. Return to page 262. Mizmah shiru ladinai shir chadash kinef la'is asa hishia la yemina yozara yakadishay hediya adina Yeshua seleini hagoyim kilat tzidkasay zachar chastoi ve'emuna selebeis Yisrael ra'u chalaf seyaretz eis Yeshua seleinu ariu ladinai kol haaretz pitzchu v'rarenu v'zameyeru zamru ladinai b'chinoir Bechinoir v'kohel zimra B'chatoi terois v'kohel shoyafar Hariu Lefnei hamelech Adonai Yeram hayam umloyoi Tevel v'yoish v'vanaharis Yimcha'u chaf Yachad harim yeraneinu lifnei Adonai kiva lishbait haaretz yishbait tevel b'tzedek v'yamim b'meisharim d'lai lai 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 lam d'lai lai 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 lam d'lai lai 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 la la lai 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 la la lai 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 lam d'lai lai 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 lam d'lai lai 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 lam d'lai lai 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 Adonai malach yirgezu amim yoshev keruvim tanu ta'aretz Adonai mitzion gadol v'ramhu al kol ha'amim Yoyedu Shimcha Gadol v'Noyer HaKadosh Hu V'yoyis Melech Mishpatohi V'ata Kenante Misharim Mishpato Tzedakah B'Yaakov Hata Asi Sarai Memu Adonai Eloheinu V'Hishtachavu Lahadei Meraglav Kadosh Hu Moshe v'Yaharon B'choy Hanav U'Shemuel b'koirei Shemoi koirim El Adonai Vehu Yanem B'Yamud Anan Yedaber Aleihem Meshameru Eidesav B'choy Knasan Elamai Adonai Eloheinu Ata Anisam El Noisei HaYisalahem Then I came al Aliyah lo Yesam Raimemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtachavu lahar Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. So we come to Mizmor David, which is on page 264. So this, we've just gone through 5 Psalms, and altogether, for this part of the service, for Kabbalat Shabbat, there are 6 Psalms. After Lecha Dodi, which we'll get to in a moment, there's a 7th Psalm. And what's the name of the 7th Psalm? Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat. It's the Psalm for the day of Shabbat, which means that the previous 6 have all got a connection to the 6 days of creation, because that's what this is about. Shabbat is it's a sign that God created the world in a period of 7. 6 of them were creative, and 1 was doing other things. We call it a day of rest. It's really a day of introspection, reflection, an opportunity to understand why we are even here. What's the other 6 days all about? Shabbat allows us to think more about God and our own purpose in being partners of creation with God. So the 6th Psalm is not in sequence. So the ones that we just did were Psalm 95, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And for the 6th Psalm, we go back to Psalm 29. And traditionally, you stand, because this is getting us into what it's all about. Friday is a bit of a mixed day. It's a day of work. It says, Kisheshet Yamim. You got to work for 6 days. You can't say, well, 6 days is a day to chill out. You've got to work. It's one of the 6 days of work. It's Shabbos when you're not allowed to work. So as a result, it has a sort of interesting blend. It's a weekday, but it's also starting to there are certain rules. Even today, I said I had some matzah. You're not allowed to wash for bread after midday on a Friday. People do, they find ways around it, but traditionally, halachically, you're not allowed to. Why not? In order to build up an appetite for Friday night. Instead of coming to the meal and saying, well, I don't really feel too hungry tonight. You should feel, I don't like using the word hungry, but you should feel in the mood for the Shabbat meal. It's not supper. It's a special meal for Shabbat. So therefore, there are rules about Friday that it's not just another day. In fact, how did I start the program this evening? A good Erev Shabbos. It's known as Erev Shabbat. So therefore, the 6th Psalm is different, because the 6th Psalm allows us to appreciate that we get up and we're getting ready to greet God. So page 264. Mizmor David, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz layalai, havu l'Adonai kavod shema yishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadras kodesh, kohoi l'Adonai al hamoyim, ela kavod yir'im, Adonai Alemayim Rabim, Koil Adonai, Bakoyach Lailai, Koil Adonai Behadar, Koil Adonai Shoider Arazim, Vayishaber Adonai Esarzei Halavonoin, Vayarkiden Kemoyegel Levanoin, Vasirioin, Kamoi, then Re'emim Lailai, Kahoi Ladoinoi, Chotzev Lavosesh, Kahoi Ladoinoi, Yochil Midbar, Yochil Ladoinoi, Mir Bar Kodesh, Kahoi Ladoinoi, Yochil Elayalois, Vayechesoi, Fioros, Ovehechol. ובהיכלוי כולו יאמר כבוד לילה Adonai, lama bul yoshav vayeshev Adonai melech li'olam. Adonai ois liyam oyitin Adonai yevarech es amay v'shalom. Tilai elai 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 elam. Tilai elai 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 lai 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 lai. So after L'chadodi also connects to this week, interestingly, because this coming Tuesday is Lag BaOmer. That's the 33rd day in the Omer. Today is day 29. Tonight, I'm not going to say what it is because we haven't counted it yet, but last night, we counted 29. So in 4 days' time, it will be Lag BaOmer. And we celebrate in Israel. There's a place called Meron. It's a small little town right near Tzfat, which is in the Upper Galilee, a place I spent 5 years in Tzfat. Very beautiful, mystical town. And the mystics, those who, let's start with Lag BaOmer. So it's the yahrzeit, it's the anniversary of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He was one of the 5 pupils who survived. So we know that during the Omer, it's a time of mourning because 24,000 is just an incredible number of Rabbi Akiva's prized pupils died. But 5 survived, and with them, he rebuilt Judaism. Judaism takes a bang. We don't ask for it, but when it happens, we brush ourselves off. We've always done that, and we start again. We never give up, like Pesach Sheni. Never give up. And he started, and he was persecuted by the Romans. He's talking about Rabbi Shimon, as was Rabbi Akiva, and he hid in a cave with his son, and they learned. But he's buried in Meron, and it's a great pilgrimage to go on his yahrzeit. But it's like 3 miles from Tzfat, and perhaps that's why all the great Kabbalists, the great mystics, lived in Tzfat. It's such a holy place, and you're right within striking distance of Rabbi Shimon, who introduced us to the esoteric parts of Judaism, to the more mystical side of Judaism, the fascinating part about God and about us and who we are and our purpose in life. So it connects to this week because those who composed L'chadodi were Kabbalists, and they lived in Tzfat. So we'll do it justice. L'chadodi is on page 266. L'chadodi lekras kahala penei Shabbos nekabela. L'chadodi lekras kahala penei Shabbos nekabela. Shamoy v'zachar b'dibur echad השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו יחד, לשמו לסף ארס ולסהילה, לחדיידי לקרסקלה, פני שבס נקבלה, לי 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 לדדם, לדדם, לקראת שבס לכו ונלך, כי מקור הברכה, אלי מריש מקדם, נסוך סעיף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לחדיידי לקראת קהלה, פני שבס נקבלה, לי 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 לדדם, לדדם, מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, כול ניצאים מתוך אפיך, רהב לך שבס בימי קבחה, והוא יחמל עלייך חמלה, לחדיידי לקראת קהלה, פני שבס נקבלה, לי 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 ידדם, ידדם, הסנערי מיפר קומי, לבשי בגדי ספרתי חמי, אלי על יד בן ישי, בסלחמי, קרבה אל נפשי גאלה, לחדיידי לקראת קהלה, פני שבס נקבלה, לי 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 לדדם, לדדם, היסיידרי, כי באוירך קומי אוירי, ידי, אורי, שדברי, כבוהר אדוני עלייך נגלה, לחדיידי לקראת קהלה, פני שבס נקבלה, לי 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 לדדם, Eloi sevoishi veloi sikol mi matishtoich achi o matemi boch yechesu aniye ami v'nirnesa ha'ir al tila l'chadaydi likras kala p'nei Shabbos nekabela v'hoyu limshisa shoysoyich v'rochaku kol mevala oyich yasis alayich Eloi hoyich kim seis chasan al kala lechadaydi likras kala p'nei Shabbos nekabela yamin usmoil tifroiti ve'es Adonai ta'aritzi al yad ish ben parti v'nismecha v'nagila lechadaydi likras kala p'nei Shabbos nekabela Boi b'shalom materes baila gam b'simcha u'v'tohala toichemunei am segula boi chala l'chadaydi likras kala p'nei Shabbos nekabela tilai lai 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 la da da la la lai lai la da 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 Shabbat Shalom. Have a great Shabbat and Chag Sameach today, Pesach Sheni. Have a beautiful Shabbos, Mazel Tov to the King. And please God, we all have a great Shabbos and following that, a terrific week ahead. Thank you for joining us on us.tv, where there's lots of programming and usually on Kabbalat Shabbat. To my own community, we'll meet you back in Zoom for a few minutes of closure in a couple of minutes. Thank you for joining and giving up your precious time. I've loved spending it with whoever you are out there. And please God, again, only good, only health, and a great Shabbos. Keep well.